If I'm not mistaken, virtually every shutdown was done by a Republican-controlled House, or the Republicans did it in order to embarrass presidents like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I don't recall any of the shutdowns ever being deliberately done by a Democratic majority, has there?
It really has been the Republicans, and it more fits with their mindset. That's why I think this one, they may well be miscalculating, because I think the American people start under the presumption, oh, crap, another shutdown. Here are those Republicans again. And to sell a message, oh, this time it's the Dems. And why? Because they want to protect health care. To me, that's not a very good hand.
This is Black Man Spy.
Hi, this is Malcolm Nance, and welcome to Black Man Spy. I am not in the United States. I am in the Middle East for this extra special super spy Black Man Spy. But as soon as I left the United States, the government of the United States shut down. And that makes our guest, Harry Litman, a extra special guest this week. Harry Litman is a former U.S. Attorney, Deputy Assistant Attorney General. He is executive producer of the Talking Feds podcast and Substack. He teaches constitutional law and security law at UCLA and University of California, San Diego. He's the senior fellow at the Annenberg Center of Communications Leadership and Policy. Law practice specializing in False Claims Act. He served as a law clerk under Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. God, and Kennedy. And just a note, since I'm on the other side of the world, and it is called a prayers time, as you can tell, I am in a hotel, but the video may go in and out. So you may see me freeze up, but the audio should be good. And this episode, though, is very important for for what's happening on your side of the world that I will have to fly back to in about 10 days. So with that, listen up. Harry Litman, welcome to Black Man Spy Overseas Super Secret Mission Edition. So, well, you know what?
God, I need my special decoder ring. Oh, I forgot it. Darn.
Yeah. Well, you know,
but I know Malcolm. I'm an FOM. Yeah. Let me in.
Yeah. You know, I was going to say, over here in the Middle East, I feel so much more relaxed now that I've flown on an airplane out of the United States and I'm somewhere where major wars and atomic bombs are all around us.
Yeah.
But it feels calmer than where you are. What the hell happened yesterday? I understand the government shut down.
Yeah, what about that? First time in many years, and the consequences before have been really grave. But the focus of both parties and the reason it's happened is really not on the deprivations to the American people, but rather, as always, the sort of dance of blame. The Dems are staking their case on the demand for a extension of Obamacare subsidies and a reversal of certain Medicaid money. In other words, they're making it about health care and saying the Republicans are trying to take your health care away. The Republicans, who, to my mind, have tended to get tagged in the past, and they are, after all, the party in power, are basically just saying the Democrats are, doing a guerrilla movement to shut things down. And it's a bigger, so that's the sort of political game. And I think the next few days we'll see how it's playing. In the past, as I say, things seem to trend that way, and that rather than, suffering in the heartland is, I think, what would move Republicans. But the Dems are taking an especially big gamble here because the federal government has already been stripped of some 300,000 workers. Services are already in many places gone, and now, as of this morning, national parks, all kinds of things will be just gone overnight. And Trump is threatening to do much more extreme action, which he is technically empowered to do. There'll be a lawsuit, but if the government is shut down, he can make trouble, and he's threatening in a straight reprisal way. You Dems, if you don't do it, I'm going to unilaterally get rid of all these programs, etc. So it's a big game of chicken. And with every passing day, the real squeeze from the absence of just government services will be tighter and tighter on the people, and each side is kind of betting. Already looking forward, Malcolm, as you know, it works back here in tumultuous DC as opposed to calm Cairo, looking to see how this will shape up for the midterms coming up, who will bear the blame. In the past, as I say, it does seem that the Republicans have gotten have emerged from shutdowns looking like the bad guys.
Yeah,
they seem to think they've got a different hand to play this time.
But let's be fair. If I'm not mistaken, virtually every shutdown was done by a Republican-controlled House, or the Republicans did it in order to embarrass presidents like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I don't recall any of the shutdowns ever being deliberately done by a Democratic majority, has there?
So I think that's right. They might have a different story, but I think that's right. Look, I'm a Democrat, but I try to say this as an objective reporter. The Dems in general, this is in gerrymandering and other issues, they are more the party of government, of public policy, of getting things done. And the Republicans have been more the party of especially under Trump, blow a hole in everything. So that leads to this natural disproportion, and they themselves, you can see it as the campaign is beginning to take very embryonic form. There are certain people who are saying, screw it, we're not, we have to fight fire with fire. I wish we didn't, but Texas is putting in 5, we're going to put in 5, etc. We've gotten our butts kicked by what's essentially a minority assuming majority control for years. And it's famous that Democratic lobbyists and partisans are always after Schumer and Jeffries for being too nice. So I think you're right. I put out there so people can judge it, my party credentials, but it really has been the Republicans, and it more fits with their mindset. That's why I think this one, they may well be miscalculating, because I think the American people start under the presumption, oh, crap, another shutdown. Here are those Republicans again. And to sell a message, this time it's the Dems. And why? Because they want to protect health care. To me, that's not a very good hand.
Yeah, but this is where Republican messaging just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Because they control the presidency, the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, to the point where the Supreme Court, I had Dahlia Lithwick on recently.
Man, she's great, isn't she?
Yeah. She's amazing. But she's terrified the hell out of me. That was the only show where we had 0 laughs. And she said, this Supreme Court is 100% in the tank. They are ready to rubber stamp anything, and that should the presidency change back, they will overturn all their previous rulings to attack a Democratic president. So with all of these parts of the machination, the machine, the Republicans control this thing. They could pass the budget without Democrats at all. Isn't that the Hastert rule, right? They're supposed to pass legislation with the Republican majority. So where are the holdouts on the Republican side coming that they need 7 to 10 Democrats?
Yeah, I think all coming in terms of the source, the actual hydraulic force, from the White House. The President of the United States, Malcolm, you would be more shocked than I, knowing the culture, assembled a huge sea of generals yesterday and told them about the enemy within and how we have to bring military force to the cities. Straight up fascist talk. And nobody thinks Trump believes, has an idea in his head. But for him, conflict, partisanship, hatred, as he said last week about his enemies, hatred sells, and it's all that sells. So, I think where it's coming from is Trump wanting, you can go back to the campaign and immigration and saying, don't do a deal. We want to do no deal and blame them. And in a similar way, I think his governing strategy is divide, and divide viciously, make half 42%, 35% of the country think that the other half are absolute vicious marauders, and that's
Right.
his only chance for pushing things forward. So I think it's a concerted strategy. I think they pretty effectively or productively put it all in Project 2025 when
Right.
they were
Right.
out, when Trump was out of power. And that is what we're seeing now. So it's a very
Sure.
cynical, but considered kind of strategy. They don't want to do good government. They want to blow everything up and then blame Democrats or use it as a pretext to assume extraordinary powers. And if I can take one more step on the Dahlia Lithwick paranoid fantasy lane, use those emergency powers to distort and mess with the election, disenfranchising Democratic voters disproportionately. And that's the strategy for a very unpopular president to try to hang on a year hence. So, there's no accident about this, that they don't want to do what government is supposed to do. Dems do want to do what government's supposed to do. And that, when it comes to the on the ground conflict, that's hard, because the Dems, in a way, keep drawing the short stick because they don't want to blow up the country,
Well,
and the
yeah.
Republicans do.
Well, Democrats want to govern. They
For
want to
example,
govern, and
they
they
think
want to do
government can
things,
do
and they
good
think,
things.
right,
Yeah.
policy. And Trump wants to rule, right? And like King George III, or as I
We
call him,
need a
King
t-shirt
Donald
right
the
now.
Last.
Democrats
Right?
want to govern. Trump wants to rule. I think it all fit here with a little MN down there. Really, it says
Yeah,
so much. It
unfortunately.
captures so much.
So unfortunately, I've read
Yeah.
Shearer's book on the rise of and fall of Nazi Germany. I've
Right. No.
also read a great book called In the Garden of Evil, which
Yes.
was about an American family who lived in
Great
Nazi
book.
Germany
Right there.
during these times, and all of Philip Kerr's, Bernie Gunter detective books during the rise of Nazi Germany. Uh, the parallels aren't even stunning anymore. They're there. We just haven't gotten into the wearing brown shirts or black shirt uniforms,
And pretty
or
close
actually,
with military fatigues in cities. And I
we
really,
are.
yesterday was a page out of Nuremberg. It really was. For a long time, just because it
The
seemed a
rally.
little unfair or incendiary, also shied away from Nazi analogies. And I'm not saying it's exactly
Well,
1933, but the parallels, the speed, the vilification of the enemy, the movement to grab emergency powers, all of these things, just historically speaking, there's a lot in 1933 in our 2025, and no sense
yeah,
not calling it out, especially because it really could point in a similar direction. Not, of course, you know better than I, and your listeners probably do, the story of Hitler, but they think he's a boob. They can't really handle the government. They put him in, will control him, and within 100 days, he's got their number, and and tragedy ensues. So that basic dynamic of trying to grab emergency power and then create an autocracy, and driven by a one-man l'état c'est-moi rule and the derogation of the Constitution. Sorry, anyone who thinks that's being, alarmist or whatever. I'm not saying yet it's Nazi Germany, but man, oh man, just as you say, Malcolm. And yesterday, you see the picture? You see the picture of these generals were called and assembled, right? It was, so he's looking over. It really is like those scratchy kinds of videos you see of Hitler in his early days exhorting. And we're talking the military. Why is the president of the United States, the greatest democracy in the world, if he wants to talk about an enemy from within, a lie, of course, everything is always fought him on a lie.
Well,
okay, try an Oval Office address. Why has he assembled friggin' generals to be there and hear this message? That is bone chilling.
I got to tell you, I think that this started out as Pete Hegseth going, I'm a Reserve National Guard major who did one short tour, in near a war and went on a couple of raids. And now I'm going to assemble what could easily have been 10,000 combined years of military experience, maybe 10,000 combined years of flag officer experience, which is a different animal. These are the smartest people in America. They are educated, they're trained, they are loyal, they have
They're loyal to
command
the
of millions of
Constitution. They
people.
have integrity, etc. Yeah.
Right, but they were insulting some of the great chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chiarelli and Milley, and we're like, whoa, whoa, Milley's combat record, right, on one tour exceeded everything Hegseth has done in his entire career. And that's not as a flag officer. That was as a junior officer. These
Yeah.
guys have silver stars, bronze stars, Joint Special Operations Command stuff. And you just go, oh, it would be like, well, like they kept saying in Shearer's book, being lectured by a corporal, right? And, I do now, I'm an intelligence analyst. This program is intelligence and national security based. So when I say anything, it's because, and here's one my default disclaimer. If this were Burundi, I would be making the exact same assessment, right?
Yeah.
Dictator, madman, mentally ill, octogenarian has taken power and is now using the state as a fascist weapons system and is now just in the baby steps of militarizing the armed forces.
Can I ask you a question, Malcolm?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you a question? So look, famously in 2020, Milley lets the word out the military is not going to go for this. If we go into coup mode, the military will be okay. And you so often think in those terms. I've actually made the point repeatedly that the most recent models of tumbling from democracy have been quasi-legal, as in Nazi Germany, not boots in the street. But even so, Trump took very determined steps, as he's done in many sectors of government, to purge Milley out, many out, and some presumably not very competent Trump loyalists there. And if you start to think about war games, basically, and where is the military, my sense is they're not going to be the moving force, but he has to think about them. And if his newly installed loyalists are enough to at least freeze the linebackers and keep them from resisting, that's something that's a real calculation on his side. Do you think it's the case? Let me blab on for one more minute. We think about the crisis that could be coming with judges, and we know that in this country, it so happens that the marshals who protect the judges are under the executive branch. And I think it's clear the way he's structured things that when the judges say, arrest that man and follow my order, if we're really at push comes to shove, somebody in Trump's, in Washington will call up that marshal and say, don't do what he says, listen to me. So the parallel question, if really it all hits the fan, do you think that the changes to put in lackeys that Trump has done since learning the lesson of Milley would be enough at least to keep them from being on the side of the people, as Milley suggested they would have been in 2020?
Yeah, this is if Milley, or not Milley, if we are not in the territory of 7 Days in May, right? That old film from the 1960s in that book, where the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is organizing all the theater commanders to conduct a coup d'etat against the sitting president of the United States. We're also not in a circumstance where you can just order the armed forces to do what you want. Trump yesterday clearly had been hearing from people for a very long time that you can't bring these people on side. And so what he did was, what Michael,
would you agree
with Michael, right? I have a podcast with Michael Cohen every week. And, we call it, in Lev Parnas, we call it Two Felons and a Spy. And I asked him specifically about this one time. And he said, every order will be the mafia boss order. And yesterday he did it. he did the mafia boss thing, which was, hey, you guys might get involved. We have some things going on. You might want to do training exercises in the city. Pete Hegseth told him that phrase. Conduct it as a training exercise. You also see that in movies, right? When you're going to go carry out an assassination, they bring in two guys with special forces and they go, this is a training exercise. As a matter of fact, the movie Enemy of the State with Will Smith was about NSA, my organization.
Yeah.
And they brought in these guys who were, for special operations guys. This whole thing of intercepting American communications, all that is a training exercise. I won't say whether that actually happens or not. We just don't
Yeah.
go around executing people at the end of it. But
By the way,
that
and Laura,
phrase,
they brought him in. Then Laura Loomer goes in the Oval Office and says she doesn't like this NSA guy. With a fantastic record of service, he's gone.
General Hack was
He got
amazing.
Loomered.
And
He got
more
Loomered.
importantly,
Yeah.
somebody else told her it's not the general in charge that's the real body of knowledge. It's always the civilian deputy at NSA is always a 20-year or more careerist in cryptology. And somebody hinted that stuff to her. But getting back to this,
Sorry. Yeah.
Trump himself did that mafia Don hint. You're all going to get involved. We could use this as a training exercise. For what? The second battle of Fallujah? I mean, you're going to be running it like it's Afghanistan, shaking down American citizens. So by him doing that mafia Don thing, he was now testing the waters. And I think that his chairman of the Joint Chiefs is going to get an enormous amount of pushback. And I think at some point, and I've said this before, at some point there's going to be an order that causes a mutiny. And when I mean mutiny, I mean
of whom? Yeah.
a mutiny of starting at the generals. Because you cannot fire your way through 800 general officers.
Yeah.
Hegseth will do this bullshit. He will say, I'm ordering some lieutenant colonel or some major to take charge of a 3-stars position. And then you will have true mutiny where the 400 people above him will go, bullshit, you can't do that. You're getting involved. This is an unlawful order. We will not carry out the execution of these orders. Oh, yep. Jesus, when that happens, let me tell you something. The last time this happened was post-World War II, right? The black soldiers mutinying in Britain, and on transports coming back to the United States, things like that. Those weren't real rank mutinies. Those were equal opportunity and racism mutinies. This would be a ranks mutiny where the armed forces will go, timeout, not doing it, unlawful, check your bullshit and come back, right? Imagine the movie this is going to be. Sorry, you have to get Denzel Washington to play the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
When I was in government, I had the privilege of working with military folks, and people say it, but they're so impressive. And among other things, I mean, look, their job is foreign enemies, and it's such a clean line. There's law enforcement, all of civil society. They themselves have different political views, but they know their job and they know what their job isn't. And the integrity and sort of fidelity of the Constitution, anyone who's been up against it can only be odd. But the phrase, the enemy within.
I know.
Call to arms of the military against citizens. We sort of like scratch our head at that. I got to think you would know better, Malcolm, but for the military, that's like, what the F are you talking about? Everything I've ever learned is about enemy without.
They maintain their bearing.
Are you kidding me?
They maintain their bearing well. But if I had been a senior enlisted, right, like I had been, some command, senior chief, command master chief, to a flag officer that was called to this meeting, because if you look at him, it was the officer and then their senior enlisted. And Hegseth kept playing this game about the E6 level, right? You listen to your E6s. No, we don't listen to our E6s. We send our E6s out to do work. There's the staff NCOs. It's the E7, 8, and 9 that run the military. And to be now empowering some junior dumbass who may actually be at the 10 or 11 year mark trying to decide if he'll stay in. That's not where common sense comes from. That's the they turned to us, the E7s, E8s, and E9s, and we turned down to the E6 and we say, take your squad and go do whatever. Because we in the Navy, we call it the deck plates leadership, right? We are the common sense. In the Navy, if you become a chief, you're a god. A god. My dad was a master chief. He started in World War II at age 15 as a seaman recruit and then worked his way up to a master chief boiler technician.
Did he lie about his age?
He did. He was 15.
You can't be 15, right? But yeah.
No, you had to be 17. He lied. Yeah. And he was in the Pacific War at age 15 and got out of the war at age 16 and a half.
Amazing.
So, but my point is, if I had been in that meeting, because I got boatloads of integrity, and I would know that there's a time you're going to have to throw your anchors down and call your career. And I would have stood up in the middle of the president's setting right after he had said, we're going to go after the enemy within. We have enemies. I would have stood up and I would have said, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? American citizens are not enemies. And as commander-in-chief, you had better know that. So if you want to put my black ass out of the armed forces right now for recalibrating your stupid, then you do it right now, bitch. All the rest of you sergeant majors and chiefs, you better be with me on this.
Yeah.
And if that had actually happened, right?
That would have been front page news.
Scenario.
That would have knocked me off the front pages.
It would have forced every individual in the United States Armed Forces to
which side are you on, boys?
Yeah. Which side are you on? Right? Are you on the Robert E. Lee side or are you on the Lincoln side?
Can I just make a very short political point? You know, he came out of the box with quite a head of steam, and it was, you know, unsettling to see. But we saw, you know, as the weeks ticked by, different achievements. There were, in retrospect, the battles over cabinet officers were so consequential, and there were 3 controversial ones in each case. Trump put a hammerlock on one or another senator. They got through, and I'm talking about Kristi Noem, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Hegseth. And all of them have been, you know, disasters for the American people. And we should hearken back to that successful show of power and have it be one of the, because, you know, there are people without any experience who he only cares about loyalty. It's not just that they have extreme views. I don't even know what their views are, but they are plainly unqualified. The damage is great, and it should be part of the bill of particulars to go legal, you know, on what Trump has wrought when it comes time to render a verdict at the ballot box.
A couple of months ago, we had Joy Reid on, and this is what she said. She said, Hegseth, Patel, Noem, you know, and Kennedy, and Kennedy. He said all would have made great spokesmen for those positions. You know, these people wouldn't even have qualified for spokesmen in some of these other jobs, you know, or general counsel, right? But to have put them in as the secretaries, this will go down as the single most corrupt administration and the most incompetent. This is President, you know, what is it? Hector Elizondo Mountain Dew Camacho's presidency from Idiocracy. And he goes, well, who's this guy? Oh, he's Secretary of Defense. Well, how'd you get that job? He won a radio contest.
Right, exactly. And by the way, it's not a coincidence. Oh, they're also incompetent. That's right. And that's what happens when you have one criterion only: loyalty to the boss. To walk into a fire, sacrifice your career. You're liable to get. You're very likely to get people who don't know a lot, who don't have a sense of policy, who haven't come from an area where they can, you know, that those go, in case of this president and his obsession with loyalty, hand in hand. So, you know, we found out yesterday a third of DOJ leadership is just gone. We don't know. It's a little bit of a black box there, but I'm, you know, as an ex-DOJer, I'm petrified of what's going on there. And that's because, you know, anybody who's a leader and used to the job they've done really just doesn't want to be there now in the new regime, where the North Star is it help Trump's political position. So it's just by way of saying the brain drain. It's not simply because he's ruthless, though he is. It's also because he's ruthless in favor of a judgment that almost certainly, in most cases, it just doesn't dovetail with competence. You know, compare Trump 1.0, a few respectable people, government types, all gone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's nice to know. Okay. Last question I have for you is simple. Can you give us some hope about what's going on in the legal side of government and the judiciary? I mean, I know now the Supreme Court is just this Supreme Court is the most corrupt Supreme Court since since I, as an African American, was declared a chair, had all the rights of a chair.
Yeah.
I really think that this is without any question, will go down in history as the most disgraceful Supreme Court. And I hope that a new president just goes 13 justices, and we're going to impeach half of you. Since I'm president, I can just point to you and say you're out.
Well, let me start with the bad news and my concordance with Dahlia. It's true, right? We had an early indication out of the box that the court would have a sense of itself and where lines must be drawn. And in the early alien cases, Abrego and the like, they drew a line in favor of the most important principle that is, I think, going to be determinative. That is, you know, it's so not just the worst in history, as you said, Trump, but a guy who was, you know, unbelievably wakes up lying and lies all day. So there's always a lie at the center, and the most sort of it's fine grained, but I think the big legal issue that's coming is whether, when he declares that night is day and black is white, whether the courts will say, oh, well, it doesn't look like, it sure looks dark outside. Nevertheless, we must defer to the president. That's the kind of fear. And early on, they seem to see that, know that, and draw the line. But as you say, and Dahlia says, in a particularly ignominious way, they on their shadow docket, they have again and again and again green-lighted excess and, to many people's minds, unconstitutional power. All the while, they kick in the teeth the district courts that they should be looking out for. All that's true, and it augurs more reverses coming up. But
okay, yes or no question. Are they going to overturn?
I was winding up, Malcolm. I was going to get to the good stuff. That's all right. Go ahead.
Are they going to overturn birthright citizenship? Are they going to overturn?
My best guess is no. And that would just be a good indication of
let's
how
put some money on the table, Harry.
Yeah.
This is whacked out. I don't think they believe in the Constitution at all.
Well, I think they believe in absolute here's what I wanted to say. I wanted to go to the people. I just think, relative to other cases we think about and our sober reminders that democracies can end, we got a lot of cultural ballast in this country. We all, went to first grade, did the Pledge of Allegiance, the notion of democracy. I think push is going to come to shove in, maybe it's a while until it happens, in some power grab over elections by Trump. And at that point, it'll be clear to the court what's happening. That's but I don't have a lot of faith in them. But I think the popular pushback will be strong. So I think on the one hand, we already are left with an absolute, demolished field of federal government. I can only imagine what's going to be involved in trying to restore the credibility, effectiveness, fairness, of dedication to the Constitution of the Department of Justice. But my best guess is, given where we start and given how unpopular he is, remember, he's very unpopular and falling more. So, my best guess is at that biggest pivot point of trying to take quasi-legal control of the elections, and which are state lookouts, it won't happen and will be saved. But that's, so that's a very glass half full. But so my best guess, and I think maybe Dahlia's too. We just have farther to go, more running room and rope between us and autocracy than other countries have had. And I think my best guess is we won't get to the end before he's gone, but man, the damage he'll leave, the cleanup job, it's like Herculean. The stables. You're a scholar.
The augury
of the Aegean, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to. My last point on this is, and a little homework to my listening audience. Every couple of months, I remind them, go watch Judgment at Nuremberg, because the Nazis. It's the trials of the Nazis' Attorney General and Supreme Court, right? In that movie, and everything the Nazis did was legal. According to the laws of Nazi Germany.
Read Hannah Arendt, read Orwell. That's the model. If this is the end of America, it'll be as it was in Nazi Germany, under cover of quasi-legal enactments. That's the hard fact.
Yeah, the neighbor who turned Anne Frank in was being a lawful citizen, and Anne Frank was the criminal by hiding.
Right.
Well, let's hope it doesn't get to that. Harry Littman, thank you.
If it does, do you have a little apartment in Cairo? I can
I
all up in Malcolm. You got friends all over the world.
But I'll tell you right now, we are establishing an office. So if you ever want to come and get, this is a good dictatorship, because it's full of Emirati money now. It's just everything. The pyramids are called the Pyramid State Park because the city is surrounded it right now. It's like Central Park now. You will enjoy that.
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Thank you so much.
I'll write it down on my list. Pleasure to be with you. Hope we do it soon again.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was a great edition of Black Man Spy. Harry Littman is a national treasure. With that, I'll hope to see you next week. I will be still in the Middle East, moving around from country to country. And you can find me on Apple, Stitcher, and where fine podcasts are sold, and malcolmnance.substack.com, and on YouTube at Black Man Spy Podcast. Take care, and I will see you on the desert beach. There's no beach where I'm going. I'm going in the middle of the desert. I will see you next week on the beach. Bye-bye.